Hello. Today I'm going to be making hot dogs from scratch in honor of one of my close friends who recently passed away, who shared a passion and love for hot dogs. I will be making the ingredients that's going to make it what I'm going to call the Michelle dog, which includes cider pickled onions, bourbon apple ketchup, and crispy bacon bits. The hot dogs are going to be made 50-50 with beef and pork. Usually I'm only finding 100% beef hot dogs, and I'm always looking for a pork hot dog. And so then I decided I might as well make one. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to make some hot dogs from scratch, which means grinding up meat, stuffing it in a sausage casing, and eventually smoking it. Now, one thing to note is if you plan on making hot dogs, it's not a spur of the moment thing. It takes at least a full day, if not 2 days. And so let's get started on this and see how far we can make it today. So I'm going to be using my kitchen stand mixer. There are a couple different ways that you can make hot dogs. I am using instructions and a recipe from 2 different sources. One is this book, and the other one is a YouTube video I watched by Joshua Wiseman. I'm going to be mixing his instructions and ingredients with instructions and ingredients from a hot dog recipe in this book. The first instruction is to take all of the equipment that you're going to use to grind your meat and put it in the freezer. Before we get started, let's talk about the difference between a hot dog and a bratwurst, because recently I was asked what the difference actually was between the two. So first of all, the hot dog is going to be much more processed and finely minced or ground on the inside. They usually come fully cooked, whereas bratwursts are generally uncooked, unsmoked, and can be prepared by grilling or boiling or smoking or roasting. Bratwursts also have a more diverse herb and spice profile than do hot dogs. Bratwursts are technically more healthy because they're not as processed. However, I wouldn't call any sausage necessarily a healthy alternative to like a whole piece of meat. So for this recipe, I'm going to be substituting out the flour, which Joshua used in his recipe, and then the corn syrup that is suggested by my charcuterie cookbook. Now, both of those ingredients are used to maintain moisture within the hot dog. I'm going to substitute those out with non-fat milk powder. There's a couple reasons for that. I don't like using corn products or corn sugars, and I also would like to keep the gluten or the flour out of my product. So that's going to be one substitution that I'm doing today. Hopefully it goes well. In addition, instead of the smoked paprika, which Joshua's recipe suggested, or the Hungarian smoked paprika that my charcuterie cookbook recommended, I'm going to be using a smoked Spanish style paprika because that's what I had on hand, and it should be close enough. This recipe calls for a different cut of meat, which I believe was beef rib or beef short rib style. And the recipe I'm going with is going to be a 50-50 mix of pork shoulder and beef chuck roast. So while your equipment is chilling in the freezer, you should get together all the spices that you need. And that includes casings. Now, I'm using the traditional sheep casings. There are synthetic casings out there. And a casing is essentially an animal intestine with all the things inside of it removed and then completely. And if you eat hot dogs with natural casings, that's what you're eating. And there's nothing wrong with that because it's important to use all of the animal if you can, which is one reason I like sausage. Because traditional hot dogs, as you know, are made using any number of scraps from a processing place. I say processing floor, but that's kind of a gross way to talk about it. But when we talk about like what a traditional hot dog is made out of, it's made out of the parts of the animals that you're generally not going to be eating. Which I guess is one good reason to make your own, because you have complete control over the ingredients and the quality of the ingredients and where the ingredients come from on the animal. All right, let's get those ingredients together. As stated, I'm using non-fat milk powder. In addition to maintaining moisture in your product, it also works as a binder. Alternatively, you could use whey protein isolate, rice flour, corn syrup, and gelatin as your binder. One other change I'll be making is instead of coriander seeds, which have been toasted and ground, I didn't have any seeds, so I'm just going to use ground coriander. If I had coriander seeds, I'd definitely toast and grind them because that would make for a much more delicious and high-end hot dog. The ingredients are 1 tablespoon of coriander seeds, 1 tablespoon of garlic powder, 2.5 tablespoons of smoked paprika. So I'm noticing that the recipe that I got from the YouTuber has both metric and imperial measurements, and I'm noticing that there may be some discrepancy. For example, I measured out 2.5 tablespoons of smoked paprika, which was supposed to be 24 grams, but it was not. And I don't know if it's a problem with my scale, so I'm going to forego all of the metric, which is the weights, except for the prog powder. And I'm actually hoping that it's right because too much prog powder can be a problem. 5 grams of prog powder. Now, because the charcuterie cookbook says to add the salts and then let the meat sit, I'm going to combine the salts. All right. Now that all of the equipment has been chilled, I'll quickly assemble my meat grinder. Now, one of the recipes said to grind on the finest, but I'm going to do a coarse grind before I do a soft grind. All right, we're gonna get to grinding this meat real quick, and then once it's ground, it goes right back in the freezer for another chill. Once it's ground, it gets mixed with the salt and water, and then it goes back in the fridge for about 24 hours. So tomorrow will be the day that I squish these into some intestines and throw them in my smoker, which should be fun because it's the first time I've ever used my new smoker, so it'll be an adventure. Meat. Yummy. I think I needed a bigger bowl. Okay, the goal is to keep moving fast with this because you don't want it to start getting warm. The next instructions were to add the salt and the pink salt. And then this wants a cup of ice water. Combine the meat with the salt, pink salt, and water. Mix by hand to distribute the salts. And then cover and refrigerate for 24 to 48 hours. Like I said, this will have to be finished tomorrow. I can work on some other stuff today. So this is 6 pounds, 3 of each. I use the instructions for the online recipe. Instead of opting for smaller pieces, I definitely recommend for the first time you run meat through a grinder that you cut them smaller pieces. I think that this is probably mixed enough. Cover and refrigerate. Now what you want to do is you'll want to cover this in saran wrap. I'm going to be covering mine with beeswax paper. But you just want to make sure you're covering it up so the air from the fridge doesn't get into the meat. And into the fridge it goes until tomorrow. Okay, so this bourbon apple ketchup recipe that I'm going to be making is of my own creation. So first let's get started on the vegetables.
if I had started this in this pot, I wouldn't have to do the transfer, but I prefer to do my sauteing in a skillet and apparently do extra dishes I don't have to do. I'm gonna cook this a little bit more until it gets very soft. If you want your ketchup to be thicker, you'll just want to simmer it for a little longer. So I'm gonna pack about 2 sliced up whole onions into this jar. Might need a bigger jar. I'm gonna go ahead and overcorrect. All right, I'm gonna work on getting that below where it needs to be. Next time you see this, it's gonna be going on a hot dog. Where we're at right now is the cat is meowing on the floor. The ground beef and pork is in there mixing up with the salt and the stuff and getting all good. And then tomorrow I'll take it out, regrind it, season it, stuff it in some intestines, and then turn it into like a hot dog. Next time you see me, it will be a different day. Okay, hi guys, it is day 2. In going over all of my notes for making hot dogs, it's gonna take 3 days. The first day was the grind, and then you put it in, you leave the salt in overnight. And then today, I'll be mixing it and freezing it and regrinding it and stuffing it. They'll have to go into the refrigerator and sort of dry overnight. Now, I'm hoping that this doesn't actually turn out to make a drier, more jerky-like hot dog, but we'll see. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm going to put the spices in my ground meat mixture from yesterday and then spread it out on a sheet pan to cool for about 30 minutes in the freezer, and then we're gonna grind it. I'm gonna try to get it to a paste-like consistency. If I don't like what comes out of the small grind die disc that I have for this, then I'm gonna pull out my food processor. Let's get started on that, and then when it comes time to stuff the sausages, I'll show you my casings. Now I'm doing this, you could do it in the actual bowl, but because I've got so much and the bowl it's so tight in there, I decided this is probably the best way to mix the spices in. All right, the spices from yesterday all mixed up. So you don't have to worry about overworking the meat in this case because it's gonna be reground again. So just do your best to get as much of the spices incorporated as possible. Because like I said, after this, then it'll get spread out on a sheet pan and put into the freezer for about 30 minutes until it starts getting just a little bit crispy from being frozen. And then I'll pull it back out and grind it. All right. The thinner it is, the faster it will cool. These will just go into the freezer for 30 minutes. In the meantime, just like before, you're gonna wanna take all of your pieces for grinding and put them in the freezer so they get nice and cold. All right, while we're waiting, I thought that we could talk about casings. These came in the mail today. They are sheep intestines. This is what they look like. They're not like the ones I remember my dad used to get when I was younger, which were, yeah, not like this.
This package should make 52 sausages or 7 pounds of sausage. So the instructions are: soak the casings in their tubes in warm water with about 100 degrees Fahrenheit for a minimum of 45 minutes or overnight in cold water before use. I'm gonna turn the kettle on and get some water heated up, and then we'll play with some intestines. So they've been dried and then they've been in salt. Um, they do not smell good. They look like a horrible, horrible taffy or fruit by the foot or something. I'm going to soak all of them because I have like 6 pounds of sausage meat. So I'm going to need all of these. I'm going to use a bread pan to soak them in since I don't really have anything long enough. All right. Hot water at a body-like temperature. And so then I'll set these aside for about 45 minutes. It's time. It's time to grind. All right, that's gonna have to go back on the tray and back in the freezer. And it is like 90 degrees in my house, and I don't have air conditioning. So this all has to be done really quickly. And then in between this, make sure to wash your grinder and put it back in the freezer. I've decided that I'm gonna go ahead and do a second grind before I stuff it instead of pulling out my food processor because I don't need any more stuff to clean. So back in the freezer for the meat and back in the freezer for the equipment, and I'll be back when they are all chill. All right, this is a process. Gonna do the final grind. Gonna stick the meat back in the freezer for a while, and then we'll get to stuffing. Whew, that is some sweaty work. That's going back in the freezer for a bit to get cold again. One of the reasons that you want to keep it cold, in addition to sanitation, is because the warmer this is, the more gunked up it'll get in your machine, and it's harder to work with when it gets warm. Also, as a note, I probably could have gotten away with the coarse grind and then one fine grind. So if you do this and you're using this same system, I'd say stop at 2 grinds because I don't really think it's getting much more processed and it's a lot of work. All right, into the freezer with that. All right, it should be noted that while your meat is in the freezer for that last time, make sure to also put your equipment in the freezer. And this time it includes the sausage stuffing nozzles and the little disc that comes with those. All right, we're gonna get to stuffing. This time around, we're gonna be using these. I'm gonna go for the bigger one. And just a note on the casings, I realized why they looked so much different. The ones I'm accustomed to don't come on a tube like this. They did this so that you can keep these open. I remember as a kid doing it where you would put these at the end of your mouth and blow air through them. So I guess that's why they've done that, is so people don't have to put intestines up to their mouth. All right. This is going to be a thing. This is going to be exciting. I've never done it this way, so I'm assuming, because what you want to do is you want to get it just over the lip. All right, this is where some of my audio got lost. So here I'm explaining how to switch to a smaller novel because the casings wouldn't fit on the other one. Natural casings come in 20 to 43 millimeters. So one of the things the instruction says is to make sure to get the meat all the way down into the feeding tube here at the top to prevent air. You can see there is some air because I tied it off. I'm gonna just take a little nick out of there. Bringing back some memories. I remember helping my dad stuff sausages growing up. Okay, I'm going to turn that off and I'm going to twist. check that out. Look at that. All right, let's try another one. You want to hold it kind of a little tight in your hand. Don't just let it go. You can kind of make your decision on how much you want to stuff in here. There are some breaks in this intestine, so it might explode. And all you have to do when it explodes is end your links there, squeeze out the meat, and then just start over, throw the meat back into the feed. If you're gonna use a KitchenAid mixer for this, I'm doing the stuffing on a 2. I did the grinding on a level 4, but you wanna make sure to go slow with the stuffing because it can get unwieldy. All right, one more. All right, there's a little air in that one. I'm gonna try to work it down in there. All right, one more time. You just want to hold it here at the edge. It's kind of hard to show. Okay, and we're gonna twist this one off. And then just gonna twist that one. And then get the next one, tie it off here. Then just get this back up here so it doesn't fill with air next time you got it going. You don't want that much air in there. So
This is what happened when there's air in the casings in the production process. It will make it so that the moisture boils inside and the casings will remain loose, which will prevent it from getting that nice snap that you want from a hot dog.
up and a split. So just do that and you throw it back in there. All right, so I think my problem now is that the meat's getting too warm. I'm gonna go ahead and put it back in the freezer.
I went ahead and stuffed them off camera so I could be done a little quicker because it was so hot in the kitchen. And then of course I lost audio. So this is what the hot dogs looked like after I was done.
Let's see how this is looking. Looking like a hot dog. Oh, you guys, look at that. I might not even end up smoking these, to tell you the truth, if this turns out really well. All right, so I wanted to talk about these hot dogs real quick. Both of the recipes that I was following wanted me to smoke them, but I boiled one last night and then fried it off. And I thought about the smoking process more and more. I want them to taste like wieners, like regular Frankfurter wieners. And so now I'm thinking, instead of smoking them, what I will do, I'm gonna boil them and then put them on the grill. Because what the boiling will do is get them up to a temperature where they're cooked and they can be stored and frozen. This project ended up being way more work than I had intended. One of the other things that I didn't think about was the fact that I have a new grill and smoker. I got it last year and this is the first year I'm using it, but it required seasoning, and that means to prepare it so that it lasts a lot longer. And that process is several hours long to season a grill or smoker. And it's given me a lot of time to think on one of how I should probably plan my projects better, and time to think about like ultimately how I want to finish these off. Once that comes off the grill, I'll give it a taste. I've got the water boiling in the kitchen for this experiment, but like if it goes as well as boiling it in a pot and frying it in a pan, I don't see that would not be a perfectly fine. Ultimately, what you want to do is make sure that before you store them, that they are cooked to an internal temperature of at least about 150 degrees so that they're food safe. This is the last day of this project. I am going to be eating these later today. It is my plan for dinner. I just have to make some buns. So let's see how this goes. Move my my sweet potato experiments out of the way. Don't ask. Let's cut this in half. Looks like a hot dog inside, hey? Looks like a hot dog. Hello. I'm gonna try this now. Yeah, so I don't think I'm gonna smoke these. Regardless of what I do with them, even if it's just to put them fresh in a package, I'm definitely not gonna smoke them because they taste really, really good this way. All right, let's go check on the one that's in the pot on the stove. All right, back in the kitchen, the water's boiling. I'm gonna turn it down to a simmer, drop this in the water. Okay, it's been 6 minutes. So I'm gonna take this out of the water and bring it to the grill. We're back to the boiled, now grilled hot dog. I'm gonna take this off and give it a taste. Ah, I forgot my knife inside, so I'm just gonna split in half. Another thing I didn't like here is that I didn't get the snap that I would normally want. I don't know, I probably did something wrong, but I mean, ultimately it's about taste, right? Okay, so right off, it's more moist. The texture is better. I think it's because of the way that the emulsification poached in the water before it went on the grill, so it is more cohesive. But damn, that's a good hot dog. All right, so I may not end up coming back on camera today. I have to make buns from scratch. I'm gonna get super sweaty in the kitchen because it's like an 89, 90 degree day, which number one tip on this is not the right time of year to be making sausages or bread unless you, of course, are lucky enough to have air conditioning. But I'm going to make the buns and assemble this, but I may not come back. So if you don't see me again, I want to thank you for hanging out with me while I do this project. I'm gonna do it again, and next time I'm gonna nail it. But if you've been on this channel long enough, you know, pretty much anytime I do my first project, no matter what it is, there's a 50% chance it's gonna be a disaster, but isn't that what's fun? You should always just try to do stuff, even if it's not gonna turn out like you want it to, because you're gonna gain experience and knowledge from failure. And based on the reflection of my life, it seems the best way for me to learn. So I guess I shouldn't mind it so much. Let's take a look at assembly when I get to that point, and then maybe I'll get back on camera, maybe I won't, but it doesn't matter because I thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, so this was the largest part where I lost audio, which was a super big bummer because this is where I talked about how much my friend Michelle would have loved this hot dog. And as you can see, it was an emotional bit of dialogue for me. But I do think that she would have loved this hot dog, and it was a really tasty one. Let this be a lesson that you should always have some backup audio going on, because I'm sure I was saying, you know, something awesome. I think I was pretty impressed with this hot dog. I was really excited about how my buns turned out and all the ingredients turned out. So yeah, I guess you can just listen to some music and watch me talk about how great this hot dog is, and then me just thinking about my friend. Of course, there's not going to be much of an outro that got shot, so while I have you here, I want to thank you for watching this video, and next time it will be shorter, and I'm gonna nail hot dogs because I love hot dogs. And yeah, thanks for stopping by. Have a wonderful day.
Bratwursts also have